PEP Radio is a part of the Pennsylvania Equality Project that plays music, news, and weather, actively advocating for the LGBTQ+ and disabled since 2024.
PEP Radio, available on Live 365, Roku, Alexa, and at paequality.com.
Here at Gay SA Radio, we're very happy to welcome the Othering podcast to our airwaves. Catch the show every Thursday at noon CAT, bringing fresh voices and compelling conversations straight to you.
Head over to gsaradio.stream to find out how you can tune in and become part of our family. Don't miss it, only on Gay SA Radio, where you are family.
One man and one woman join forces to rid the world
What are you doing?
of inequality and fascism.
Seriously?
I'm trying I'm trying to do a promo here.
For whom? What are you doing?
Welcome to the Othering Podcast with Mike and Dory. All right, today we are talking to Corinne Goodwin. She is the founder and executive director of Eastern PA Trans Equity Project, a nonprofit organization which has a mission of empowering transgender individuals throughout a 42-county area of eastern and central Pennsylvania. An award-winning community leader and in-demand speaker, Corinne actively works on issues impacting the lives of LGBTQ Pennsylvanians. Corinne is a member of the Pennsylvania Commission on LGBTQ Affairs and was a founding board member of Keystone Equality. As the leader of the Trans Equity Project, she works to advance LGBTQ+ rights in coalition with organizations that include the Human Rights Campaign, Pennsylvania Commission for Fairness and Justice, the ACLU, the Pennsylvania Youth Congress, and more. Welcome, Corinne. It's great to have you.
Welcome. Thank you so much for talking with us.
It's almost like I wrote that introduction myself.
It was. It was perfect.
How eerie is it that it sounds just like how you would write it? No, okay.
So we first met you at the Lehigh Valley Pride Festival.
Yes.
Which was awesome. So do you want to kind of give us a little background how you really started this foundation and got to the point you're at today?
Sure. So I started my what most people would call transition in around 2010, and went to visit a local transgender support group called Lehigh Valley Renaissance that had been around for 15 years prior to my getting there. And what I found was a half a dozen transgender women kind of all sitting in a circle and talking about life, but, pretty quickly realized after going to that group for a while that, there was a whole lot more that could be done. And so myself and a couple of other people in 2014 started expanding the mission of that organization. So we started to offer some scholarship programs and a few other things. And then that morphed into, in 2019, we launched the Trans Equity Project. Mm-hmm. Just as we were heading into a pandemic. So it's always the fortuitous time to launch a nonprofit is when you're going into lockdown. But so we launched in 2019, really serving just 3 counties, so Lehigh, Northampton, and Monroe County. And our focus was really on continuing the support group and then adding legal name change assistance to our portfolio of services. But quickly, especially through the pandemic, realized that there was like a lot of other needs. So we started offering food and rent assistance, for example, to people. And since then, we've just really added more and more sort of real estate to our territory. So we now cover 42 counties. So if you think about Pennsylvania, you go all the way from the southern border in Maryland all the way up to New York. You go from the far eastern border all the way out past State College, which is in Center County, interestingly enough, in the center of the state. And we cover that whole area, really with the exception of Philadelphia. So we don't cover Philadelphia County. But we really viewed it as our mission is to really provide services to underserved areas of the state. So
Okay.
there's always a need for more services in Philadelphia. But for example, with our legal name change program, there are 6 other organizations in Philadelphia that do this work. But you get out into the really rural parts of the state in particular, but even the suburban counties, and we're really the only one offering that program.
And that's really like awesome that you do that, because so many people need help with changing their names to be able to be more themselves. You grow up with the only time that you're supposed to change your name is if you're an AFAB and you get married and that's your last name. But it's actually more than that, because sometimes the name never fits you. Whether or not you're transitioning or, you're not. But it's important to have a name that actually fits who you are so that you can then be more of yourself and feel more comfortable presenting yourself to the world as who you are inside. A lot of times what's inside is always so caged and, ooh, you can't show it and it's taboo to let other people see who you are. But what a great and beautiful way to begin by showing who you are with a name that actually fits you.
Yeah, and it's even more than that. So if you think about applying for a job, and maybe you're a trans guy and, you just look like a little short man with a beard, right?
Right.
But, so you look like a Joseph, but you have to go in and apply for a job with the name Jane on your application.
Right.
Right.
It makes it hard to apply for that job, and it outs you immediately as a transgender individual and opens you up to all the discrimination that comes with that.
Right.
You think about if you're a high school student and you want to apply for colleges or go to college, and the challenges that could happen with dorm room assignments and things like that. So we want to make sure that people have that opportunity. Think about, one of the things that we hear a lot from parents of trans youth around name changes is that, my kid will not get their driver's license until they can get their chosen name on it. That being said, there are lots of other reasons to get a legal name change. So to your point, it can be just, you don't like that name and never have. I have a sister-in-law who changed her name decades ago for that specific reason. And then, also it could be, maybe you are a survivor of domestic violence,
Right.
and you're trying to avoid contact with your abuser.
Yes.
And so while we focus on helping transgender folks, we've helped quite a few people who are domestic violence survivors.
And thank you for that too.
Yes.
Because I just don't, it breaks my heart to know that there are people who are stuck in those situations and there's not enough resources out there to help them so that they can be free. Because it is terrifying to think that you're not only beholden to that person, but there's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And, usually the worst part, the most dangerous part is when you leave, right after you leave.
Right.
And being able to change your name so that you're free not only of that name, but also potentially to protect you is a huge thing. And, we need more of that for all transgender people, non-binary and domestic abuse survivors.
Yeah. And, and this will kind of lead into like a lot of the other work that we do. So I will disclaim this first, that legal name changes are my absolute favorite thing to do, right? Because they really set you up, for future success so that you can apply for that job or you can apply for an apartment or whatever else without outing yourself, right? So it has this long tail that can really help you down the road. But, we also do basic needs assistance for people. So like I said, this really started during the pandemic is when people were struggling. But, you can't go to school, you can't go to work, you can't be successful in life if you don't have food in your belly and a roof over your head and electricity to charge your devices so you can apply for jobs, right? Or do your work. So we do a lot of help that way. We do educational scholarships. So last year we helped 10 people with not just college, but also trade school. So, we helped one kid go through barber college, right? And we helped another person get a scholarship to Princeton. So, and
awesome.
everything in between. And then on top of that, we do a lot of advocacy work, a lot of education work. I'm actually doing an event tonight with the Girl Scouts where we're doing a workshop on how to be an ally. So,
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So, and not just an ally for trans people, but an ally for anybody, frankly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because everybody needs an ally, whether it's because of the current political climate or just in life in general. You need that person that understands you and doesn't necessarily have to be the exact same way you are. Because sometimes having that ally that's not the same way as you makes it even more, beneficial, because you feel like then you're really not alone. Because it's like, that other, in the case of like me, there's other Black people, other mixed people that feel the same as me, and I get that. But when somebody of a different gender or a different color says, I get you too, that actually kind of just makes you feel so much better, because then you feel like, wow, we really aren't alone.
Yeah, and when we talk about allyship, we can kind of talk about it on the big macro level of like, are you an equality voter? And, do you give charitably and do all, and we talk about advocacy too. But often that allyship is just like, it's right at the point of contact, right? So somebody makes an offensive joke, and how do you put a stop to that, right? Or in my case, maybe we're in a meeting and somebody misgenders me or uses my dead name. How does somebody stand up for me when I'm feeling that moment of vulnerability? Mm-hmm. Or it could be, something as simple as, you see that person on the street who's struggling. Mm-hmm. And yeah, actually, it's a true story. So about 2 weeks ago, I went out for a walk middle of the day just to sort of clear my head, and school buses were letting out. And I hear one kid yell like across the street to another kid who had gotten off the bus, and he goes, yo, I can't believe you let those two steal your shoes, right? So apparently this kid had his shoes stolen at school, and then he likes coming across the street and he's, in his socks. And he was like, it wasn't two of them, it was actually three of them. And, these three white boys have been picking on me for over a month. And, I just stopped, and listen, 13-year-old, Black kid probably could care less about getting help from a 66-year-old white trans woman. But I stopped. I just said, like, listen, I overheard what you're saying. Is there anything that I can do to help you? And at least letting them know that somebody else cared.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And so many people don't do that because they're afraid for whatever reason.
And honestly, I think that when you have that moment to help and you give $1 or just say, hey, how can I help you? That child, even if they, teenagers, even if they don't want it in that moment because they're teenagers, they will always remember that. Mm-hmm. And that will always be able to be carried with them so that when they become adults, they can then pay that forward. They can then, create a situation where, you know what, somebody did this for me, I'm going to give it to somebody else. And that's where it changes everything. That's where that one moment of, do I intervene and be helpful, or do I stay back and just, let it go? And the fact that you did that child will always remember.
Right.
Somebody, an adult, actually came to their help.
Yeah, well, and allyship. So, just because I happen to have my PowerPoint up because I was modifying it for a teenage audience earlier, but is that we kind of talk about like what the progression of allyship looks like. And so I talk about the 6 A's of allyship. So first is you have to have an appetite to want to learn about people that are different than you, and then you want to ask questions. By the way, the best place to ask questions about transgender people is not of the transgender people. It's this amazing tool we have called Google, right? Yep. So you can go out there and just be aware that there's a lot of bad content out there too. But then you become aware, and that's sort of the passive side of allyship, right? But then on the other side is like, are you starting to amplify? So do you talk about these issues, and then do you try to take some form of action? Maybe it is offering help to that kid, or maybe it is donating to a charitable organization, or maybe it's, voting every single time there's an election, right? And then, at the end really is advocacy, right? So are you being public in your allyship? And then, that cycle never ends, right? So there's always something new to learn. There's more questions to ask, more opportunities to amplify the challenges that folks might have.
So on a more personal note, and what you're comfortable talking about as you were transitioning and coming out, did you have that ally and that support? Or does a lot of this kind of stem from your experience and what you wish you had or needed?
Yeah, so I will say that I have been, for the most part, very blessed. I have an amazing spouse. We've been married for 42 years.
Wow.
Awesome. Congrats.
Yeah, I know. I am that old. But we've been married for 42 years. We've actually been together for 47.
Wow.
So we started going out when we were freshmen in college.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I won't say that it was easy, but listen, we kept all the therapists in the Lehigh Valley of Pennsylvania in business for a while, right? So I had my therapist, she had her therapist, we had a couples therapist. But, we figured it out. We worked together. My kid has been absolutely amazing. I've lost some friends and some business acquaintances more.
Right.
But, I think, and this is just sort of the lesson that I talk to people about. So we actually had one of our support groups last night with about 40 people in attendance. And, I say it all the time is, you will be surprised. People that you thought were going to be an amazing ally, maybe not so much. Mm-hmm. And then the people that you thought were going to be horrible will be fantastic.
Right.
And that's absolutely what I found, right? So I had, I'm an independent business owner. I own a business consulting firm on top of running a nonprofit. And, when I came out, I had a client fire me, and actually they still owe me about $20,000.
Oh, geez.
They're based in another country, and it's not worth suing in another country over 20 grand.
Right.
Then I had another client, worked for a very, very large company, Fortune 50 company. And when I came out to them, their response was like, oh, okay. So I guess you're going to get a new email address then? What is it?
That's awesome.
Perfect response. Right?
Yes.
Perfect response. So, there have been some challenges, but I've had a lot more good people in my life than bad people, I will say.
That's good.
And I'm glad.
Yeah. And I think that that's the way the world is too. There's more good people in the world than bad ones. Just the bad ones make all the noise.
Yeah.
And I have to admit that I used to think that, especially here in America, that it was more bad than good because of, what I grew up seeing and hearing, and the media at the time, newspapers and local stations would only amplify the bad. Yep. And so you would hear all of these dog whistles or just inundated with crap and ugliness. So you kind of get this feeling of, oh, well, okay, then it's just me against the world. And honestly, becoming disabled and discovering myself that I am LGBTQ plus has made me realize at how much there are so many good people out there, and that it's not an isolating event. It can be, but it's not, because there's so many good people out there. And, it goes back to that saying that Mr. Rogers said, where when things get dark, look for the people that help. And unfortunately, a lot of times they're not platformed.
Yeah. You
don't see them. So you could look all you want and you still don't see it. So then you figure, oh, well, then there's not any here. And that's part of why I want to do this so badly too, is that it's almost like a bullshit meter. When you're, disabled, you can automatically weed out the assholes that are going to be like, oh, I thought you were going to get healed. And then when you're LGBTQ plus, you end up also having that bullshit meter of, when you come out, you realize who are your true friends, who's your true family. And, unfortunately, family isn't always blood relatives, but the ones that you can find. And there's a shitload of people out there that are beautiful and that will love to be, your found family. Family, not family.
Well, and I think it's also important to give people some grace.
Yes.
Right. And we all come to that place of allyship at different speeds, from different places, and we have different abilities. So I was just out at Dickinson College this last week and doing some talks out there and some trainings out there with both students and faculty. And one of the parts of the talk was talking about how to be an advocate. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so we always do this activity where I put up a graph up on the screen. And so you have the vertical axis, right? And at the bottom, it says, are you in? And at the top, it says, are you out? Right? So are you in the closet or are you out of the closet? By the way, you can be in the closet or out of the closet as a queer person. You can be in the closet or out of the closet as an ally. Mm-hmm. Right?
Right.
And then on the horizontal axis, on the very left side, it'll say lazy. And all the way to the right is ambitious. And in that graph, or in that plot, there's a million things that you can do to be an ally and advocate. So, for example, you can be a little on the lazy side and not be out either. Mm-hmm. But there are things that you can do, like you could vote.
Right.
So voting, there's elections twice a year. It takes maybe an hour both times. So 2 hours out of all of those hours in the year, you have an opportunity to demonstrate some allyship, mm-hmm. right? Or, you could give money to a charity. By the way, this is the point where I say, please give us money. Okay? So look us up on the internet and give us money. But, you can give us money and $100 lets me buy food for somebody, mm-hmm. right? Or $400 lets me pay for somebody's legal name change. Mm-hmm. $1,500 lets me pay for somebody's rent. We'll take anything, right? But and if you don't want to give to us, give to an organization for something that you care about. Mm-hmm. And then all the other end of the graph, it could be running for office. But in between, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of things. And we'll actually do an exercise where we kind of go around the room and we have yellow stickies and we go all right, go stick one up there, right? And then, we just try to help people explore how they can demonstrate allyship within their capability. And sometimes you start small and then you grow.
That is true. And sometimes it's, you grow up and you see all of these things. It's either you fight and you're loud and you're out there, you're running for office, or it seems like nobody's doing anything, is how they portray it. And I think it's really beautiful when you created that graph to show that voting, saying, I don't like that joke. I don't want you to say those things in front of me. Yep. Those little things make a huge difference. And showing that kind of makes people realize, oh, okay, I can make a difference. Because sometimes it's hard to just jump in and be loud and be, wearing everything under the sun to show who you are for.
And it's hard to see or feel that your one vote makes a big difference.
Yeah.
About yourself or your one voice.
Well, I'll just, on the whole subject of voting, I'll just say that a year ago, we had a primary election up in Northeast Pennsylvania that was decided by 4 votes.
Wow. Yeah.
4 votes, right? So that 1 or 2 votes really, really mattered.
It makes a difference.
It makes a huge difference. Yeah. But again, it's always portrayed as if the huge amount of people don't agree, then it's a moot point type of thing. So, yeah.
So it's okay to start small.
Yeah.
Right? It's also okay to take a break once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Sometimes you need a break. I spent most of yesterday, vegging out in front of the TV and drinking a little wine, right? Sometimes you need a little bit of a break.
White or red?
I'm a red wine girl.
Yes. Yeah. I have to say, I commend everybody who likes wine because I am not a wine girl at all. But I love learning which one you are, if you're red or white, and red's usually what everybody says. So good choice.
I like a good Pinot Noir. So.
Oh, Yeah, those are usually really good if you get a good brand. Sorry to get you off topic, but
That's okay. We can talk about wine too.
and well, honestly, all of that kind of works into being an advocate, being an ally, being just a friend, and even just being a friend can make a difference. And because then people can sound things off of you. So knowing what kind of wine you like, or knowing the jewelry you might or may not like. How do you like to wear your hair? Or, ooh, I love your glasses. What brand? All of those little questions may seem innocuous, but they really kind of help bridge people together.
Yeah, a while back I was talking to somebody, and especially so in the trans community we talk about cracking your egg, right? So when you're just kind of coming out and figuring out, who you are and how you want to transition, if you want to transition, things like that, it can feel really isolating. And I would say, and I'll say that in the current sort of political environment, we see a lot of our community members really kind of collapsing inward a little bit right now. But this gets back to the whole idea that there's more good people than bad people out there. So I was talking to somebody, and they're just like, well, I just feel like I can't get out there and do anything, because, everybody's going to know I'm trans. And this happens to be a person who is into astronomy. And I said, well, there's a local astronomy club. They meet every month, up on top of the mountain at the observatory, right? And they're like, yeah, but I'm trans. I go like, they don't care if you're trans. They just want to talk about quasars and stuff that I don't understand.
Yeah.
And, give it a shot. And they ultimately did. And lo and behold, they are, running to become the treasurer of the astronomy club.
Yay.
Wow.
Right?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Right. And so, if you don't put yourself out there,
right,
you're never going to get to where you want to go anyway.
Yeah. It's so hard to not worry about what other people think, which is a big problem I have. I've always worried about what other people think because of bullying as a child and stuff like that. So it's so hard to get past that and to have an ally out there and someone that can kind of help push you and motivate you. That makes a big difference.
Well, and people that can give you ideas.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So I'll tell you another story. So this is years ago. I like to think of myself as an advocate and, out loud and proud and all that stuff. But I was at my dentist's office. And one of the things that happens when you get older is like, you start to get teeth problems. So all you young people out there, brush twice a day and don't forget to floss.
Yes.
Okay?
So true.
Otherwise you become me. And I had to go in and get a couple of crowns done, right? Which is fairly major. And my dentist has always been wonderful. The staff's been wonderful. But I was at the dentist office getting drilled, with objects of destruction in my mouth and rubber dams. And my dentist hired a new dental assistant. And while I'm laying back there in the chair with stuff going on in my mouth, she starts having a conversation with the dentist about me and using he and him pronouns. And I'm just laying there going like, I can't talk, right? I'm like powerless. And, wondering in my head, like, what do I have to do? Do I have to wear more makeup? Do I need to get, aren't my breasts big enough? By the way, they're fabulous, right?
Yes.
Okay. And, are my hands too big, or, what do I have to do? I left the dentist's office and I went to the grocery store and I bought a pint of Chunky Monkey ice cream and like down that on the way home. Right. I ate my feelings instead of standing up for myself. And then I had to go back for a follow-up like a couple weeks later. And that day, like I wore makeup and I wore a dress and I had cute little Chuck Taylor sneakers with flowers on them. And like, I was like really looking cute. And it happened again. And I'm really, again, in my head, I'm going like, what do I have to do? Like I got like all girled up this time for a freaking dentist appointment. Right. And ate my feelings again. I went on Facebook and I like put it on blast, and like a bunch of people, were going like, oh, we need to put that guy out of business. We need to do this. We need to do that. And then a friend of mine called me up and said, why don't you just send them an email? Right. And I did. And my dentist called me back apologized, said that they would take care of it. I went in for my final follow-up, and everything was great. The hygienist apologized to me. The dentist apologized again. Everything has been great since then. But sometimes what we do when we're injured is we lash out, right?
Yes.
Right. And that's what I did. I put them on blast on social media, which was not the best thing to do.
Right.
Because, this person made an error. And when you call people out versus calling them in, sometimes people harden their positions.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is true.
Right. And so, I learned a lesson that day about calling in versus calling out.
And sometimes after you've tried to call in, sometimes you have to blast them to get them to understand that this isn't right, this is wrong.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
And sometimes it really works. But you have a great and awesome point that sometimes the first thing we need to do is offer grace and say, this is wrong, this hurt me. How can we fix this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's not easy at all. And but it offers the person who perpetrated against you the opportunity to then reflect and say, oh, I didn't realize I hurt you. I'm sorry. How can I make it better? And then if the person doesn't do that, then to blast the shit out of them. And
or go to HR or
right. Wherever you need to go.
So in my professional career, working in business, our firm, we've done a lot of work around coaching, right? And how to be a good manager and things like that. We write training content for companies and things like that. And one of the things that we always talk about is using what's called the STOP method. So STOP is an acronym. So it stands for S is state what the inappropriate behavior was. T is tell the person how that made you feel. Mm-hmm. O is to give them some options. And then P is to stress the positive results and to practice if you can. So let's just say that the three of us are in a meeting, right? And our boss, says, Michael, you do this, and Joanne, you do that, and Sally, you do this, and Corinne, you do that. But instead of saying Corinne, they say he is going to do that and point to me.
Right.
A great opportunity is, by the way, first time at least, you reprimand in private, not in public if you can. And so come out of that meeting and maybe, you, Michael, right? You say to them, hey, boss, have you got a second? I wanted you to know that you misgendered Corinne in the meeting there. And that made me feel bad. Matter of fact, all I could think about is how bad Corinne probably felt. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't thinking about the stuff going on in the meeting. So maybe a better option is to just stop using pronouns and just use her name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet that would make everybody more productive. Wouldn't you agree?
Right.
It's 20 seconds, right?
And I love that
because
it doesn't put the onus on explaining in detail everything, because sometimes it's really hard to, especially if it's against you and you're doing it, it's hard to put in words at how it hurts you. But if somebody else can jump in, that helps immensely. And honestly, seeing anybody do that makes you feel so much better, because then again, you're not alone.
And literally, it's a 30-second investment or a 1-minute investment of somebody's time. And so that's an example of real allyship, is when somebody stands up for somebody who's feeling in a weaker position.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's that's why it's important. Like I stick out like a sore thumb. I'm not going to be able to hide no matter what I do, unless I can find paint, but that ain't going to work. So, it's always it's nice when Mike kind of takes point and shields me from the day-to-day of being stared at, or because the difference between those stares where people are looking at you because, ooh, I like what you're wearing, versus how dare you be around me. And, it's nice when Mike will either stand in front of me or stand next to me closer to show that this ain't gonna fly type of thing. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't always have to be words. It can be just a gesture to show, no, you're not going to say anything. You're just going to mind your business, and I'm going to mind mine. And, that
just
ally.
a hand on the shoulder,
Yeah.
or whatever. Yeah. Yep.
And it's nice. It's a nice feeling, and not always having to, be the tough person and shield yourself from everything, and just be you. And honestly, it's one of the best feelings. And so I like doing that for other people. If I had a student with HIV, and he didn't hide it. He didn't, go around telling everybody either, but he told me, and you could see that he was bracing for me to reject him. And I just gave him a hug, and I said, I don't care. You're a human. And, I could feel the weight just lift off of him as I hugged them, because I was accepting him as, I don't care what you have. I'm still going to hug you.
Yeah.
Because you need a hug.
And then, give them a helping hand if they need it, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Point them at where they can get treatment or a clinic or whatever it is that they might need to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Exactly. Yep.
And, I told them that I'm always here for you. So whenever you need me, just email, text, whatever. And that's just how I am. And that's why I think everybody should be kind of like that. Because when you stick out and then you don't, for those that don't stick out like sore thumbs, make yourself stick out sometimes. And sometimes that's also freeing, against bullies, against those that would try and, tear you down because you don't look the right way for whatever stupid reason it is.
It makes me think of the other conversation I often have about allies is, so when I was in third grade, we moved to a different school district, middle of the year, right? So everybody's got their friends, right?
Yep.
And beyond that, I was the little queer kid who, historically got picked last for anything. But with this new school, they played kickball every afternoon, during school recess. I had never played kickball in my life. I didn't know how. And so, it's the first day I get picked last. I go up to kick the ball, and I did one of those Charlie Brown moves, where you miss the ball and then you land on your ass.
Yep.
I literally did that. And everybody laughed at me. And then there was this girl, her name was Jamie Columbus. I remember it, 60 years later, right? Beat me up, and this went on for a week of me getting picked last and, doing horribly. And then finally this other little kid, his name was Johnny Lee, I remember, kind of pulled me aside and he goes let me show you how to kick the ball. Let me show you how to play kickball. And we practiced how to kick, and we practiced he taught me how to crook my foot at the end so the ball would go in the air, and how to catch it and all this other stuff. And then after practicing for a few days, again I went and I got picked last. But then I kicked a home run. It went over the fence even.
Nice.
Awesome.
Right. And I was the hero. Right. And then Johnny just got out of the way and let me play kickball. And that's what allies do, right? Is they see a problem, they help identify a solution, they implement that solution, and then they get out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I was, listen, it's freaking kickballs, not the end of the world, but it felt like it when I was 8.
Well, yeah, it does feel like it. I mean, when you're a little kid, every little thing that you do when you're, before preteen years is the end of the world. Because at the same time, everything revolves around us still in our little heads.
And at that age, when you're being bullied and laughed at like that, to have someone come and help you and have your back, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And when you don't get that, it makes everything worse, and just the whole situation is just 10 times worse.
And it sometimes, it's easy to look away, especially when you're a kid.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, we're all little shits at times. Because we don't know any better a lot of times. We're still trying to figure things out. And so the fact that Johnny Lee did that is amazing, because a lot of kids don't always think about, well, what about the other ones? And I love that that you were able to have that one little spark of joy, I guess you could say. To come in and do that. Because again, children are little shits. We don't think in terms of everybody else.
Adults are little shits sometimes.
Yes, they are. True. That is so true.
So during that time, I remember coming home and and parents that this girl had beat me up, and they go, well, that means she really likes you. You're like, no, it doesn't.
No. Yeah, my mom said the same thing. When little boys pick on you, it means they like you. No. They're picking on you because they're little shits.
Yeah. But that's what we try to do with the Trans Equity Project, right? Is just to kind of give people that safe space. So we run 20, soon to be 22 different peer-led support groups. Yesterday, we had a play date for little kids, trans littles, like under age 13. It was just a roller skating party where they can come and have fun, and their parents can kind of network and hang out with each other. You try to provide that safe space. And then as folks progress, you try to give them, the tools that they might need to kind of move to the next level. And then, hopefully they have an opportunity to pay it forward down the road.
I'm sure they will, because, that small act of kindness may in the situation at that point seem so small and minuscule. But people remember those things. People will honestly put that in their heart, and I think it makes their hearts grow huge. And then they want to then help somebody else who's down and out. And because, we all have our moments where we're down and out.
Yeah, we had a rally for LGBTQ rights in Harrisburg a couple of weeks ago. And after the rally, I had 2 moms come up to me like crying, thanking me because we paid for their kids' legal name change and helped them through the court process, right? I had another younger person come up and say, I don't know if you remember me, but you helped me get my master's degree a year ago. And I just, passed my certification to become a therapist for trans people. Right. And so
awesome.
It's those things that kind of make it worthwhile.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Meanwhile, we're negotiating with landlords trying to help reduce people's rent, which is not fun.
No. But it helps, though, too, because, rents are ridiculous. I understand that you need to make some money so that you can pay for repairs and things like that. But come on.
Yeah.
Well, so I will admit that I used to be a landlord. So the first house my wife and I ever bought was a 2-family house. And it was awesome because the rent from the upstairs apartment paid our mortgage. It was great. And then we moved away, and then it was like the worst thing ever because if you're a landlord and you get a bad tenant, you had a really bad tenant that, it took, and this is in New York State, it literally takes 6 months to evict somebody. So they didn't pay their rent for almost a year. They literally destroyed they defecated down all the heating vents.
What the hell?
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
One of them was a diabetic, and they just took the syringes and chucked them down the cellar stairs, and we had to hire a medical disposal company to come in and take care.
Jeez.
So I will also defend landlords because sometimes but the truth is that we weren't trying to make a lot of money on that rental. We were we had tenants in the upstairs apartment who were amazing, and we didn't raise their rent for 8 years. Right. But as soon as we got those other tenants out, man, we sold that house and no longer landlords because it was awful.
And like I said, I understand you need to make money. It's a way of being able to create a nest egg for yourself.
Business.
It's a business. You're supposed to make money, and that makes sense. Unfortunately, you do get those awful tenants that don't pay. And, a lot of the money that you're making goes to fixing that. And I still don't understand how the fuck you defecate in those things, but whatever. I don't.
But the point is that you don't need to soak
right
your clients either, right? And I remember being in a conversation with a mayor of a community one time, probably 3-4 years ago, and we were talking about gentrification and building these new beautiful buildings in this town, and how all the folks that were local folks couldn't afford those rents. So what's happening is people who are telecommuting to their jobs in New York or Philly or DC or whatever it is, they're living in these buildings, and pricing local folks out of the market. And he goes like, well, but it improves the tax base, and it lets us fix more roads and all this other stuff. They're like, well, that's great, but if you don't have anybody to drive on the roads,
Yeah, what point is it?
or what's the point, right?
Right.
And so sometimes you take care of your own a little bit too.
Right. And that's the thing, is that it's not to say, especially in a capitalist society, that you're a bad guy because you want to earn money for your business. You're not the bad guy. What's bad is when you're constantly raising it to the point of where nobody can live there except, the elite few who probably aren't going to come and live there anyway. Now you've got a bunch of buildings that are sitting empty, and a lot of people who were local living in those, old buildings that are now homeless. So now you've created a worse problem than if you just maybe spent the little bit of money, fixed it up, let those local people live in it. And, maybe they can't afford to pay you at first, but maybe they can do work around the place so that it beautifies it. Or they become the tenant who works on everybody's apartment, fixes the plumbing and all of that stuff. There's ways to do that so that you can then not only still earn from it because, taxes and all that stuff, but you then are giving back to the community.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. It's about treating humans as humans, right? And trying to meet folks in the middle as much as possible. We had a rent client a few months ago, actually probably over a year ago now. But they were behind on rent by like 3 months. And the conversation, so we were able to cover 1 month's rent for this person. They found another organization to help with another month, but there's still this leftover month. And so the conversation that I had with the landlord was, so this person, has been a decent tenant. They take decent care of the place. If you evict them, how much money are you going to have to invest in this apartment on repainting and recarpeting and everything, right? And they go like, oh, that'll probably cost me, $5,000-$6,000 to do what I need to do. And I said, so do you have that extra $6,000 laying around, or can you afford to, give up this 1 month of revenue? And that's what we did. We helped negotiate away almost a full month's worth of rent.
And that's awesome.
Yeah.
And honestly, when you do those things and keep the people in the building, you also get like tax breaks for that. Because if the building's sitting open, I'm not 100% sure. So if a CPA is out there, please let me know. But my understanding is that when you actually have people in the buildings, you can get some sort of tax break versus when it's just sitting there empty.
Yeah, I don't know about that. And I imagine it probably varies by municipality.
Right. I'm sure it would, because God forbid we all have something straight across the board here. But but still, even if that's not the case, you still end up spending way more to refill the apartment than if you just negotiate with the people there. And again, you also, if you have them kind of work around the apartment to make up for that lost sense of revenue, you can actually probably, write that off on your taxes and get that back. And then you also raise taxes because people are beautifying your building. And then you still end up getting in the better tax bracket because your building's beautiful. You have tenants that are taking care of it instead of throwing them all out and, demolishing the building, rebuilding this god-awful whatever thing you want to put there instead of something, actually artisan, and sitting empty.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, it really is about having a mindset about investing in community, right?
Right.
And so that's what we try to do. We try to invest in our community. So, the way I often talk about it is, listen, if by helping somebody with their rent or by getting them their name changed or by whatever it is, and actually, this is a conversation we have a lot with legislators around a lot of the horribleness that's going on around anti-transgender legislation nowadays. But it's like, what having, civil rights protections for queer people does is it gives them the agency they need, the confidence they need to go out and get that great job, so that they can, pay taxes, which fill our potholes, which make our communities better.
Right.
Right.
And so ultimately, it's about helping people become better citizens, if you want to. It's probably not the best word, residents of their community, right? Who can give back, right? And support charities and support things like that. So a lot of times it's just about giving people a leg up. And in our case, sometimes that's giving them a safe place to come in one of our community groups. Other times that might look like paying for a name change or a scholarship. Sometimes it's about doing some training with hospitals or doctors on how they can do a better job serving community members. Sometimes it's, working with legislators on helping them write, we hope will pass someday, legislation that would reform the legal name change process, so that costing $1,000, it would only cost $150.
And that would be awesome.
Yeah.
And having, you guys protected helps everyone else. Protecting trans people helps every single one of us.
Yeah.
Because by having trans people, part of the problem is that so many people want to put you in a box. You're either female or you're male. You can't be anything else because colonialism. But when we have those open boxes and, we have your beauty, your wisdom is protected, then the rest of us also are protected to be who we want to be. Instead of policing what people are, it frees everyone. Even if you are male and female and you do comfortably fit in those boxes, which there's nothing wrong with that, but you have to understand that there's other people who don't fit those boxes well. And by having those people who don't fit the boxes have, ultimate freedom, everybody else is free. We get to wear our hair however short we want or however long. We get to wear pants or skirts or, everything like that. We can wear makeup or not wear makeup, depending upon where we are. It frees everything. Fashion, cars, everything just becomes freer for everyone else.
Yeah. Well, and ultimately, it's really about helping anybody, right?
Yes.
Whether they're trans or cis or, white or black or, able-bodied or disabled or whatever it is, right? It's really about, how do we clear the obstacles that are in people's path so that they can, in fact, go to school, get a good job, pay their taxes, accumulate a little bit of worth so they can pass it on to their kid, whether that's in the form of a home that they own or a car or, in my case, a model railroad in my basement that takes up way too much space. my kid really does not want.
I would love it. Adopt me. Cool. I will happily take it.
I'll just say that I'm really glad my kid was smart. He got basically a free ride to college. And it's a good thing because all the college tuition money went into the model railroad.
Awesome.
There you go.
But yeah, so, and that's really what anybody wants, right? So whether it's you're a transgender person or, any other category you want to think of, people just want to have that fair shot.
Yes.
Right? Want to have an opportunity.
And but the problem is that when trans rights specifically get limited or demolished, not demolished, then all the other dominoes fall.
Yes.
Women's rights goes out the window. Black people's rights goes out the window. Everything else, I can't pronounce that damn word, but the one where it says that you can't be married to somebody of a different race. Yeah. Those laws fall. So it behooves us to protect LGBTQ plus because their rights allow the rest of us to breathe.
Yeah, and you can already see that starting to happen, right? Where, and often, we talk about, so when we're talking about legislative action and things like that, there's a lot worse places to be than Pennsylvania, where I live, right? I could be living in Texas or Florida or Tennessee, right? But even the fact that these conversations are being had,
Which is ridiculous.
Gives permission to open it up to all these other things. And we are seeing now in these other states that have enacted all this anti-trans legislation, they've expanded it out into, conversations about women's bodily autonomy, right? And, by the way, it isn't just abortion. It's about the availability of birth control. And it's about, bills that would negatively impact the ability to adopt, or who can adopt, and are you allowed to maybe put a child up for adoption, right? You can see it having impact around other marginalized communities. Just look at what's going on with immigration right now.
Right.
And if you're a person who, even if you're a U.S. citizen, but English isn't your first language, and how people are, again, collapsing inward, not leaving their house, not going to work, not going to school. And ultimately that creates a bigger burden for all of society. So we need to be really thinking about what is the broader impact of all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly. 100%. Because we all deserve to eat. We all deserve to live. And we all deserve to pursue and be married to whoever we want.
Right.
It should not be limited to the few at the top, because it's not really a right-left problem either. It's the top-bottom.
Yes.
And not in the good way. So it's just...
We'll just let that kind of hang there.
Yes. And it's just, it's not fair. It's ridiculous that we have to have these continual conversations of who has the right to be a human. And not any book out there will convince me that I should hate my neighbor, that I should hate LGBTQ or disabled because they don't look perfect, whatever it is that may mean, because that also varies from person to person. So we can't ever reach that so-called perfection.
Well, and I think it gets back to, the idea that you never stop fighting, you never stop being aware of the vulnerability, right? So in the LGBTQ rights movement, you can take a look at, when the Obergefell ruling came that, allowed, same-sex marriage nationally, right? And you could almost hear nationally amongst LGBTQ advocates the sigh of relief, right? Every kind of like, oh, we won, right?
Yep.
Well, the other side, they had already started their plan because they knew that it was going to go through to start attacking trans people, right? So there's always going to be the next target, and after trans people, it's going to be, immigrants, and after immigrants, it's going to be whoever. And so, eternal vigilance is important. Right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's a shame that we have to have that eternal vigilance, that constant awareness, because it should just be enshrined. We're here. We have always been here, and we will never go anywhere.
It doesn't mean that you don't. So it gets back to where we kind of talk about allyship, right? You're allowed to take a rest.
Right.
And so many people I talk about, they're like, oh my God, we just got to get to the midterms, right? No, we don't. We have to get to the midterms and to the next election, and so on and so forth, right? And we have to work locally and statewide and nationally. And, it also, by the way, it isn't a marathon where like I have to run this whole race by myself. It's really a relay.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, I run, and then, I need to take my rest. Before I rest, I hand the baton off to someone else. I get my week's vacation. So my wife and I just went to Denver a month ago.
Ooh.
And didn't turn my laptop on for a week. It was awesome.
Yes.
Until I got back and turned on my laptop, and it was like walking into a buzzsaw. But, I'm allowed to take a rest as long as I know someone else is able to hold the fort for a little while.
Right. And that is the biggest aspect of this whole fight, is that we have to have people rest. It's like that analogy that I've mentioned before that I can't remember who said it, but it's a chorus. And when you hold that note, the whole group isn't holding the note together at the same time. Some drop out, take a breath, and then rejoin, and then the others drop out, take a breath, and rejoin. And that's how we have to be, and that's what's radical, truly, is the idea of taking that rest, because they want us to keep constantly going so that we burn out. But if we step back sometimes and relax, we have more power to then keep going.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure you need rest before your speech tonight, and we're running out of time here. So real quick, I wanted
he's real good at that.
unfortunately.
Thank you, Michael.
So real quick, I want to kind of lift your little foundation up a little bit here. The Trans Equality Project. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Okay.
No, now you blew it.
Did I say equality or equity?
So
You said it right.
Eastern PA Trans Equity Project.
Yeah, I think I said equality instead of equity.
So,
but anyway.
listen, I should have clearly chosen a longer name for our organization. So I just typically call it the Trans Equity Project, just to make it easy.
But they have helped over 2,300 people in their attendees and community and support group meetings. They've helped over 500 people legally change their name. They've given over 309 people rent, food, mutual aid. They've changed lives with over $124,000 in life savings and assistance. And they fed over 2,100 people. They've made a huge difference. So that's an amazing foundation.
Yes.
And that's just this year.
Yeah, that's just this year, which is amazing. That's incredible.
And you are an incredible person.
So
And
how can people find you and donate and make a difference?
Sure. So the best way is to go to our website. So it's patransequity.org, and you'll see the donate button right at the top of the website. And please feel free to donate using any major credit card. We also take Venmo at EPTEP, EPTEP, or Cash App, which is ETEP1. Or we'll take chickens and trade. So we'll make it work. But yeah, thank you for that. And the work we're doing right now, especially we're in the middle of this government shutdown. So like our food assistance right now is going through the roof. So we are really working hard on trying to make sure that people are fed and able to remain housed.
And thank you for that.
Yes.
It's a shame that it has to come to our government, deciding to be petulant, but it just shines on the beauty of the people that are helping. And finally, you're getting that right spotlight that should have always been on you for doing all of this hard work. And I'm trying not to cry here, but you are thank you so much for being a beautiful person and doing all you do. And it really means the world.
Well, thank you for that. And I'll just say, by the way, it's not just me. So, we have a small team, but, we're small but mighty. We have a board of directors, which is seriously committed to, doing this work. And we have about 40 volunteers that, run a lot of our support and community groups and the Pride programs. So where we met you this summer, we went to over 30 Pride events this summer. So luckily the one in Allentown or the Lehigh Valley was the last one of the year. And we got a little rest after that. We really have a wonderful group of people that work for us. So thank you for calling that out. I really appreciate it.
And thank you so much for joining us and talking to us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
It has been. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for listening. Please leave a rating for us wherever you listen. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok.
Othering Podcast is brought to you by Loudcore Productions in conjunction with your support. Your host, Mike and Dory Morris, graphics by Joshua Morris, and join us next week on the Othering Podcast.